wish it would be a slow and painful death.
And this is exactly what people want to see. They want to see migrants. They want to see people who aren't the whites tortured. That's what they want to see. The far right, that's what they want to see. They see that as a way of justice, seeing it as a way of being empowered to see somebody else who doesn't look like you getting, you know, murdered, tortured, etc. The list goes on.
I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody as ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston. I'm Jack.
Should we bring back the death penalty? Video by Landor. Now, if you don't know in the UK, we have no death penalty. I'm very curious to see what this guy has to say, and I'll chime in on what my thoughts are on the death penalty as well. So yeah, let's get into it.
Should we bring back the death penalty? Because that's what I'm hearing more and more often from right-wing influencers and all over X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And frankly, I can completely understand why they're saying it. Just yesterday, we heard that Axel Rudakabana, the Southport killer, has attacked one of his prison guards. Now, this story broke on GB News, and as someone brought up the death penalty, you can hear the crowd's supportive reaction.
There is some very serious breaking news tonight.
Of course, GB News, the most radicalized, conservative, far-right news channel. Man, it's crazy, it's crazy. It's honestly insane, man. Obviously, if you don't know about Rudakabana, he's the one in Southport who killed those two young girls, the two young white girls in Southport. And obviously that's what sparked the far right rallies across the UK afterwards, right? Because it was a immigrant, or it was a autistic Somalian, I'm pretty sure he was from. That's where he was from, pretty sure. But yeah, because of the type of person he was, it caused an enormous outrage across the UK. And yeah, obviously got put in prison. But the wild thing about this whole situation about Rudakabana, him attacking prison officers inside of the prisons, it's not okay. Obviously not. But this is a growing issue inside of prisons that we have in the UK. Obviously, we have an overpopulation problem within our prisons. Prison officers aren't even trained properly. Like, if I'm pretty sure they have like prison officers, they only need 6 weeks worth of training, and then you're allowed to be a prison officer. Crazy, by the way. So yeah, they're pretty much just letting anybody become a prison officer. So they're not trained correctly. They're not paid sufficiently. And obviously they have too many people to handle. Now, why do I bring up the overpopulation problem and the problem that prison officers are facing? It's obvious, really. Because there's so many problems that is out of the control of prison officers. It makes it more likely that prisoners obviously are going to be acting out. But the reason why GB News is targeting Rudakabana, because of obviously how recent it was, and because he was not white, right? Because how many times are prison officers getting attacked, right? And they're white, but that doesn't ever reach the news. It's always the black ones, right? So it's just a growing racial issue that is still very prevalent in the UK.
The Southport murderer Axel Rudakabana has attacked a...
It's mental to think like, okay, well, I'm sure you can point out many more other stories where you can see white people attacking prison officers as well, right? But they don't make the news. It's always the black person, man.
Prison officer.
I'll echo what Christo just said. This man should not be alive. I am for bringing back the death sentence for monsters like this. And I might sound cold, I might sound, you know, extreme, but I wish it would be a slow and painful death.
See,
and it's not just this crap.
And this is exactly what people want to see. They want to see migrants. They want to see people who aren't black, who aren't whites, tortured. That's what they want to see. The far right, that's what they want to see. They see that as a way of justice, seeing it as a way of being empowered to see somebody else who doesn't look like you getting, you know, murdered, tortured, etc. The list goes on.
According to an article in the Daily Mail, around 58% of Brits support bringing back the death penalty. And interestingly, the support is strongest amongst Reform voters and Tory voters, and least strong amongst Lib Dems, which doesn't actually really surprise me. Anyway, bringing it back...
It doesn't surprise me, because if you understand what conservatism has been in the past, we understand they are okay with violence as long as it brings justice in their eyes. It's just not. It's not something that's due. If you look back in America, the Confederate flag was led by conservative values, and as it is right now today, same thing. Where conservatism just means far right, far right violence. The list goes on, man. It's wild, bro. It's absolutely wild.
To Axel Cabana, I can't think of a single case in recent history that has brought this topic back to the forefront of people's minds. And actually, it's starting to change their minds about the whole issue.
Brilliant.
Okay, so I don't have an awful lot to say on this, but I'm going to say what I feel. I've always been opposed to the death penalty, and as those of you who watch the show over a period of time will know that I changed my mind after the monster whose name I won't even say.
I wonder why. So she was seeing all these criminals doing all these things, but as soon as they see one story about a migrant, right, an immigrant who came into this country, as soon as they see one person like that, now they're like, you know what, bring it back. But what about when the Europeans were being or acting amok? You know what I'm saying? What about all those times? What is only now you see the black person? Now you're like, okay, you know what? Let's bring it back. That's wild, bro. And this is what I'm saying, bro. If they don't look like if Rudy Cabana looked like the white woman that you see on your screen, bro. If he looked like her, this thought wouldn't have come across her mind. It would have been a thing where, oh, maybe he had mental troubles, which he did. He's autistic. Well, maybe we need to get him help. We need to get him support. We need to make sure that he lives out his sentence and learns from his mistakes. No, you don't see that for black people or for migrants at all. You don't see that for people who don't look like white people, right? It's broad day racism. It's the only way to put it. That's wild.
He admitted to the crime. He was seen on cameras. There was no doubt whatsoever that he did those murders. For this, I decided to change my stance because I always worried about miscarriages of justice. But it was very clear from this murder, these murders, that there was no doubt. There was no doubt. And this person, in my mind, was so evil, so horrific, that there was no redeeming him. He wasn't going to be rehabilitated by a knitting class here and there in prison. He is not worth keeping alive on this planet. So for this reason alone, I changed my mind on the death penalty. And I would say that when it's very clear who did it and there is no doubt, and the crime is horrific like this one, then we should actually be removing people from this earth.
Let me just make my position on Axel Cabana.
This is insane, man. It's insane. Now, me personally, I'm on the opposite side, right? Now, I'll explain my point very clearly. So, boom. The death penalty serves no one. It serves no one, right? Yes, you can think, oh, these murderers, they don't deserve to be on the planet. These rapists and pedophiles shouldn't be on this planet. I get that as well. I get that. But giving them a quick death, how does that solve anything? Right? What does it solve? It just solves them not being here anymore, right? Instead of having them suffer and show a real example, right? That's one point. Second thing, the reason why I don't want to bring back the death penalty is for reasons such as wrongly accused criminals. Because as we know, the amount of times black people get wrongly accused, over policed inside of black communities in London, in the UK especially as well, right? It doesn't just happen in America, it happens over here too, right? And those who get wrongly accused or wrongly judged, now their life has already been decided, right? And then you find out 2 years later that person wasn't actually the real murderer. But now it's too late because he's already dead. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you're taking people away from their families when they weren't the real perpetrator, right? Before they even had a chance to prove themselves, for you guys to even look over the evidence properly, right? So if you try to reinstate the death penalty, mistakes like that will happen over and over again, as it happens in America, right? Where they have the death penalty still to this day. Just wild to me. Even with the fact that we know the amount of times people get wrongly accused, wrongly imprisoned, especially black people get wrongly imprisoned, right, for a crime they didn't commit. And now they're facing the death penalty before they even get proven otherwise, you know?
Extremely clear. He does deserve it. His crimes were so heinous, and there is literally no chance whatsoever of rehabilitation. Quite frankly, even if he were to be rehabilitated, I don't care. He should never be released from prison. And so at that point, you have to ask, well, what's the point? Why are we bothering? Why should the taxpayer have to pay to keep this guy in prison for the rest of his life? And I agree, they shouldn't. But I will say this, agreeing and knowing that one specific person or even a small group of people definitely do deserve the death penalty is not quite the same as saying that you think it should actually be brought back. So why do I say this? Well, I say it because it's true, and I am the case in point. I have absolutely no hesitation whatsoever in saying that Axel Rudikabana deserves it. But I am hesitant to say that we should actually bring back the death penalty. Now, before you unsubscribe and leave comments and everything else, just hear out my reasoning, because I think it will make more sense to you than perhaps you might realise. I think for a society to have the death penalty, the ultimate punishment that cannot be reversed, it needs to have three things in that society. You need to have trust in the state, you need to have trust in the legal system, and you need to have trust in the fellow members of society, because they're going to be the jurors who decide whether you're innocent or guilty. And I don't think that we have any of those three. Let's start with the state. You can't trust the government to keep to manifesto pledges.
Yeah, you don't even have to look too far. You can go on YouGov and you can see the polls where majority of people do not trust the state. Majority of people do not trust the parties that lead our country. But the reason why people don't trust them is because of historical reasons and how badly the country is doing economically and how people feel, right? So of course, you can see that majority of people do not trust the state because it is historically, time and time again, done us wrongly, right? You see this today, Labour going back on their words every 2 seconds. It's crazy. And then when it comes to trust in each other, I mean, you can go in London, you can go anywhere in the UK. You walk down the roads, how often are you going to be able to see people smiling, right? Which is wild. We have a country that doesn't smile. You know what I'm saying? And in many polls, there was a poll like about the top 10 most unhappy countries, and the UK is one of them. It's crazy. That's how unhappy people are. And when you see all the racial tensions and all of the division that's within our country, gender war gaps, wealth gap, and obviously the racial tensions where it comes to, well, the far right, going after Muslims, going after Asian people, going after migrants, etc. Brexit, making it much more tense between British people and European people. You know, so being able to trust somebody from other countries is not something that's really within our country in terms of culturally, I'd say, you know. But yeah, he's absolutely right there. He's absolutely right there.
To control the border, to balance the economy, you can't even trust the Prime Minister not to weaponise the justice system against the native population whenever it's convenient for him to do so. And yet now you want to give the government even more power. Just think about it. What happened the last time we gave the government extra powers? Well, it was the Terrorism Act of 2000. And in your mind and in my mind, we probably imagined that it would just be used against, well, terrorists. And of course, in many cases, it is used against people that you and I would consider as terrorists. But it also gets abused frequently. Basically, everyone with a right-wing opinion is now subject to being arrested or detained at airports using the Terrorism Act. It happened to Tommy Robinson. It happened to a Royal Marine a couple of weeks ago. It happened to Paul Thorpe's friend. And Paul Thorpe is now scared of what the state is going to do to him, and he has basically quit YouTube.
Right.
My point is just this. Think about what happens every time you give the state more power. If you give them more power, you should...
The reason why I'm hesitant, or not even hesitant, why I completely agree with the state trying to imprison, not Nigel Farage, Tommy Robinson, it's because of the amount of hate speech that he has brought amongst the UK people, right? Especially towards Islam. especially towards Muslims, right? You know, the amount of times he vilifies Muslims' cultures and Islam's culture, and then you can look at the exact same thing with Christian culture. It's a pure hypocrite type of mindset that he has, right? And then him literally bringing people to places of business, people where people live, and saying and inciting violence on other people's cultures, right? He should obviously be in prison for something like that, for having the types of views that he has. I wholeheartedly believe in that, right? And let's flip the script. Let's say it was an Asian person having the exact same type of views that Tommy Robinson has, but towards Christianity. Do you not think it would be outwardly fair for that person to not be allowed to continue that type of hate speech towards Christianity? Of course you would, right? So you gotta have that same type of energy for people who do it the opposite way, right? Exactly. So that's how I know that giving the state more power to do and act on hate speech, if it's hate speech based on false information, you shouldn't be allowed to be speaking that type of talk. You know what I'm saying? Just facts. And you can say things like free speech. I get that. Free speech, okay, cool. But if you're literally inciting violence, then yeah, no, that's not free speech anymore. That's hate speech now. There you go.
That it will be used against you or your kind of people. The legal system. Now, I don't trust the legal system in the UK. And if you're a regular viewer of this channel, I'd be surprised if you do trust them.
Why?
I mean, really think about it. How often have we seen judges use any excuse, no matter how crazy, to avoid deporting a foreign criminal? Oh, your son doesn't like Albanian chicken nuggets. Sure, I guess you can stay in the UK. It doesn't matter that you've committed a crime here. It's completely insane. And then compare and contrast that to what we saw during the Southport riots. We saw people who weren't even involved in the rioting get years in prison. And unfortunately, one man even took his own life. He was literally holding a placard and shouted at the police that they were scum. And that was it, years in prison. Great. Then Lucy Connolly, well, she wrote a bad tweet and she got almost 3 years in prison, despite the fact that she deleted it and apologized and she was remorseful and she has PTSD. All of those things didn't matter. So taking all of that into account, if you really do trust the legal system and you trust these judges to use these additional powers appropriately and correctly, so be it. But I absolutely, categorically do not. And what about the fellow members of your society? Do you trust them? Because they're going to be the people sat on juries making the decisions about whether you or someone else is innocent or guilty.
You know how crazy this is? When you understand that majority of the country is still white, British, and yet a white British man is saying he doesn't trust white British people. Ain't that crazy? It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, okay. When it comes to that lady that he was speaking about, the PTSD woman, okay, well, if you understand that people that have PTSD shouldn't be handled the same as somebody who's, you know, normal, let's say, then have that same energy for Rudy Kaban, because he was autistic and was not of same mind, right? So you can see the hypocrite type of energy this guy's moving with, bro. That's how I know he's coming out of bullshit. That's how I know, bro.
Well, I, for one, do not trust them at all. We have a massive problem in the UK with racial biases in juries. And I'm not just making that up. UCL did a research report called Diversity and Fairness in Juries. And here's what they found. I'll put the graph up somewhere up here and I'll link.
Black jurors exhibited same race leniency towards black defendants and were more likely to rate white defendants more harshly than black defendants. But then if you turn around and see that white jurors do the exact same thing to black people, it's kind of like, kind of evens the playing field. Just look at that one.
The actual paper in the description below. It's on page 185 if you want to go and look into it. And here's what they found. They found that a black or minority ethnic juror was 3 times more likely to find a white defendant guilty than a fellow black person who was being charged with something. And that isn't actually married across the races, by the way. A white juror was also less likely to find a black defendant guilty than a white defendant. Basically, if you're a white guy in the dock, everything is going against you.
No, because you must understand that black people are over-policed, right? Over-policed, over-represented in arrests, so wrongly arrested. So you see more black people getting arrested, put in front of judges who were actually innocent. So guess what? Guess what that fucking means? You're less likely to become guilty if you were never guilty in the first place, right? Wrongly arrested. So after all the evidence has been found, they're like, oh wait, this person was never guilty to begin with, because majority of the time, black people are over-policed compared to their white counterparts. So what you're going to see is more black people are going to be less likely to be criminals, less likely to be found guilty. That's what you're going to find. This guy's an idiot.
Straight away from the get-go with the jury. That's a big problem. We have a really fractured society. In our society, basically everything is blamed on white people. All we've had constantly from the left is oppression this, oppression that, intersectionality, critical race theory, blah, blah, blah. It's got to the point, right? I read a headline. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the video. I read a headline that an Asian professor in America had written a paper all about how the black community attacking Asian people in America was somehow white people's fault. It was all down to white supremacy.
Yeah.
That's absolutely insane thinking.
Well, it's not really hard to understand when you understand that that is true, my friend. Take, for example, what's his fucking name? Myron Gaines. Take, for example, Myron Gaines. This man is the most Nazified, quote-unquote, African person, right, that you've ever seen in America. And look how many black people follow him and his views towards other races of people, but has completely different energy when it comes to white people, which was caused because of white supremacy. So yeah, that professor was correct in saying those things. It's not absolutely ridiculous. It's exactly true. And this type of person that we're watching right now, yeah, this is the type of the damaging type of mindset that a lot of far-right people follow. That black people are just complaining for no reason. That black people or Asian people are complaining for no reason. They have no point of reference to have any levels of discrimination when they've experienced it systematically, individually, and they just completely disregard the points that these people bring up, right? And then when they tell you what it's because of, you completely disregard it. What do you call that, bruv? You call that propaganda, my friends. Right? Throwing lies. Telling lies about black people. Telling lies about Asian people. Right? This is dangerous. It's very dangerous, I'll be honest.
We've got to this point in society where it feels like, obviously, you know, everyone agrees that Axel is a complete monster, but often people are like, well, the black guy can't do anything wrong. White people are always evil, bad. They've done all these bad things in history. Why are you holding me responsible for, like, some terrible thing the British Empire did 300 years ago?
Well, because you're still benefiting from what your ancestors did from 300 years ago. You're still benefiting from the types of atrocities that your ancestors did from 300 years ago, where the people that benefit from it are still alive today, who can now make things better because of it, right? Who can actually make up for their ancestors. When you're still alive, when you're still part of the same empire that's still standing, you can choose to make good out of it, or you could choose to just act like it never fucking happened, right? Reparations, reparations for black slaves, right? And their ancestors, because they're having to still pay for what their ancestors had to go through today, systematically, right? And individually too. So, yeah, you do, as a society, I'm not talking about individually, I'm talking as a society, you do have a responsibility to pay back the things that your ancestors did. Yeah, that's just how it goes. You know what I'm saying?
Shove off, I do not care. But that's where we are as a society. And so no, I do not trust my fellow jurors to make the right decision. I just don't. So
even though a majority of the UK is white British, right? So you don't trust white British people, right?
knowing all of this, knowing that we can't trust the state, that we have two-tier justice in our country, and knowing that we can't really trust the other people around us, that society has become a low trust place, why are the right wing so desperate to have the death penalty restored? And I'll tell you why. It's because they look at cases where it is extremely clear that someone does deserve it, like Axel Ruda-Cabana, and they go, well, because I now think that this guy does deserve it, I must surely also believe that we should bring the death penalty back. But actually, that conclusion doesn't follow. Even you can think that one specific person does deserve it without thinking that we should therefore bring it back in total. And let me give you an example, also from the right wing. I see people on the right wing now, and I have no idea if this is true, by the way, but I see people on the right wing talking about how Lucy Letby might be innocent. People like Dan Wootton are going into this. I'm pretty sure it's Dan Wootton. If I've got that wrong, Dan, I'm really, really sorry. But I think it's Dan Wootton who's saying, I think that Lucy Letby might be innocent.
No one saw Letby do a single thing. There is no CCTV. There is no DNA evidence.
Okay, well, Lucy Letby, for her crimes, would have been given the death penalty. So what are we saying here? You're kind of admitting you want the death penalty back, but you've just kind of highlighted a case where it would have been applied inappropriately, and you are now telling me that Lucy Letby is innocent. Well, too late, you know, it depends how long she would have had before her execution date.
This is the point I was trying to get to, right? And this is why the far right wanted to be in place, because they completely disregard everything to do with stats, to do with things that could go wrong. They just see the right things. They just see, oh yeah, I just see justice. I just want to have justice for murderers, right? And the people's families that had somebody get taken away from them early, right? But the justice system has been put in place to where those people will rot in jail for the rest of their lives. That's what their punishment is. Murdering them, what does that do? Time and time again, we see that when families lose someone and at the hands of a murderer, and let's say that murderer now gets the death penalty, that family feels no different to before. So what justice are you actually serving by having this person be killed? You're not actually achieving anything, right? Because that family feels no different. They still lost somebody. There's no difference between them being that murderer being dead or being alive and rotting. My opinion, I prefer that person to rot in jail instead of allowing them the scapegoat of living, of dying. I'd rather not. That's just me, bro. That's just me. It's wild. It's a wild life we live in, man. It's a wild life we live in. Truly, man.
Of course. But let's say she's found innocent in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years' time on appeal, and it turns out that some of the evidence was fabricated against her, and a lot of the evidence wasn't shown properly in court.
Yeah. And that's the main point I was trying to get to. The far right want to have this become a thing where we bring back the death penalty to see more migrants die, and more people that don't look like them die, right? Because they see the amount of arrests that black people get, and how often wrongly accused black people are, right? And they want to see him just die. They just want to see him die. That's what they want to see, right? They don't care if that person was innocent. They just want to see him die, which is wild, right? But that's what white supremacy looks like. It don't matter what you've done. I just don't like you anyway. That's what white supremacy is, bro, right? Just because of the way you look, I really don't like you. Things like that, bro. Why do I bring up this point? If we bring back the death penalty, right, you'll see a major increase in the amount of wrongly accused people being put to death. You'll see that happen. And who are those people majority going to be? It's going to be black people, because they are over-policed. They are overrepresented in the justice system in terms of arrests. So what does that mean? Higher chances of that person being found wrongly accused, being put to the death penalty. Right? So that's what they want to see, man. That's what they want to see. Anyway, I think we've seen enough of this video. I would love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Of all this death penalty talk that everybody's speaking about recently. Yeah. I love you, man, for watching. Until next time. Love.